1984, Nintendo designers Shigeru Miyamoto and Takashi Tezuka got to work on developing two video games simultaneously. The first, Super Mario Bros., was designed to be a final farewell to the Japanese Famicom console, intended to be released first in 1985 and designed to be a linear platform game, incorporating Nintendo's successful philosophy of athletic-based gaming. The second, targeted to be released in 1987, was designed to be a more open-world format, intended on being a more thought-provoking challenge for video gamers and families, incorporating action, role-playing and problem-solving exercises. This game was to be the launch title to the new Famicom Disk System. Nintendo were ahead of schedule for their Japanese market, and on the 21st of February 1986, the Famicom Disk System was released with the launch title The Legend of Zelda. The game would be an international success and go on to create one of the biggest franchises of all time. The console would find a home in the Japanese market, though for technical and cost reasons would not be released internationally. Releases to the North American and European markets were in July and November 1987, respectively. The Legend of Zelda was set in the fantasy land of Hyrule. The plot centres on a boy named Link, the playable protagonist, who aims to collect the 8 fragments of the Triforce of Wisdom in order to rescue Princess Zelda from the antagonist, Ganon. During the course of the game, the player navigates throughout the overworld and several dungeons, defeating enemies and uncovering secrets along the way. The decision was made to release The Legend of Zelda to the North American and European markets in cartridge format, being the first home console title to include an internal battery for saving data. With Nintendo launching the NES in 1985 and dominating the market, releasing a new console for Zelda would be a risk they would not take. Ironically, due to the Famicom Disk System's establishment in Japan, a cartridge version would not be released there until 1994 under the title The Hyrule Fantasy, The Legend of Zelda 1. The Legend of Zelda incorporates elements of action, adventure and role-playing genre. The player controls Link from a flip-screen overhead perspective as he travels the overworld, a large outdoor map with various environments. While the player begins the game armed with only a small shield, a tantalising cave immediately beckons them within, where a sword is entrusted to Link by an old man for use as their primary weapon. Throughout the adventure, various characters aid Link by giving or selling equipment and clues, mainly found in caves scattered throughout the land, some easily accessible, and others hidden beneath obstacles such as rocks, trees and waterfalls. Dangerous creatures roaming are battled while attempting to locate entrances to large underworld dungeons, each a unique maze-like layout of rooms connected by doors and secret passages, often barred by monsters which must be defeated, or blocks moved to gain entrance. Dungeons also contain useful items which Link can add to his inventory, such as a boomerang for stunning enemies and retrieving distant items, and a recorder with magical properties. By successfully completing each dungeon to obtain all 8 pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom, the artifact allows entrance to the final dungeon to defeat Ganon and rescue Zelda. Apart from this exception, the order in which the game may be completed by traversing any given dungeon on the overworld is largely flexible to players, although they do steadily increase in difficulty by number, and some rooms can only be passed using items gained in previous locations. The story of The Legend of Zelda is described in the instruction booklet and during the short prologue, which plays after the title screen. A small kingdom in the land of Hyrule is engulfed by chaos when an army led by Ganon, the Prince of Darkness, invaded and stole the Triforce of Power, one part of a magical artifact which alone bestows great strength. In an attempt to prevent him from acquiring the Triforce of Wisdom, another of the three pieces, Princess Zelda splits it into 8 fragments and hides them in secret underground dungeons. Before eventually being kidnapped by Ganon, she commands her nursemaid Impa to find someone courageous enough to save the kingdom. While wandering the land, the old woman is surrounded by Ganon's henchmen when a young boy named Link appears to rescue her. Upon hearing Impa's plea, he resolves to save Zelda and sets out to resemble the scattered fragments of the Triforce of Wisdom, with which Ganon can then be defeated. During the course of the tale, Link locates and braves the 8 underworld labyrinths, and beyond their defeated guardian monsters, retrieves each fragment. With the completed Triforce of Wisdom, he is also able to infiltrate Ganon's hideout in Death Mountain, confronting the pig-like Lord and destroying him with a silver arrow. Obtaining the Triforce of Wisdom from Ganon's ashes, Link returns it and the restored Triforce of Wisdom to the Princess Zelda, and peace can return to Hyrule. According to Nintendo developer Shigeru Miyamoto, those in Japan were confused and had trouble finding their way through the multipath dungeons, and in initial game designs the player would start with a sword already in their inventory. Rather than merely simplifying matters for players, Miyamoto forced the player to listen to the old man who gives the sword initially, and encourage interaction among people to share their ideas with each other to find the various hidden secrets, a new form of gaming communication. With The Legend of Zelda, Miyamoto wanted to flesh out the idea of a game world even further, giving players a miniature garden that they could put inside their drawer. He drew inspiration from his experiences as a boy around Kyoto, where he explored nearby fields, woods and caves, always trying through Zelda titles to impart players some sense of that limitless wonder he felt through unknown exploration. "When I was a child," he said, "I went hiking and found a lake. It was quite a surprise for me to stumble upon it. When I travelled around the country without a map, trying to find my way, stumbling on amazing things as I went, I realised how it felt to go on an adventure like this." The memory of being lost amid the maze of sliding doors in his family's home in Sonobe was recreated in Zelda's labyrinthian dungeons. The hero, Link, was so named in part to connect players inserted into this world with their interactive role, as something of a blank slate represent and not their individuality or methods. Designed by Miyamoto as a coming-of-age motif to identify with, journeying as an ordinary boy, strengthened by travels to triumph over great challenges and rise to meet evil. The name of the titular princess came from Zelda Fitzgerald, Miyamoto explained. Zelda was the wife of famous novelist F. Scott Fitzgerald. She was a famous and beautiful woman from all accounts, and I liked the sound of her name, so I took the liberty of using it for the very first title. As with Super Mario Bros., Koji Kondo composed the game's 5 music tracks. He had planned to use Maurice Ravel's Bolero as the title theme, but was forced to change it late in the development cycle after learning that the copyright for the orchestral piece had not yet expired. As a result, Kondo wrote a new arrangement of the overworld theme within one day, which has become an iconic motive echoing throughout continued entries of the series. The game also took advantage of the system's controller having a built-in microphone, a feature the NES model did not include. It was used to defeat a certain large-eared monster by blowing or shouting to eliminate them, creating confusion with the US players considering the instruction manual still hints that this rabbit-like enemy, called Pole's Voice, hates loud noise, leading some to think the melodic recorder items should be used to attack, but disappointingly has no effect. As a compensating measure, the creature was made weak to arrows in this edition. The cartridge version made use of the memory management controller chip, specifically the MMC1 model, which could use bank switching to allow for larger games than had previously been possible, and could use a battery-powered RAM, letting players save their data for the first time on any cartridge-based medium. When Nintendo published the game in North America, the packaging design featured a small portion of the box cut away to reveal the unique gold-coloured cartridge. In 1988, The Legend of Zelda sold 2 million copies. Nintendo of America sought to keep its strong fan base. Anyone who purchased a game and sent in a warranty card became a member of the Fun Club, whose members got a 4, 8 and eventually 32-page newsletter. 700 copies of the first issue were sent out free of charge, but the number grew as the databank of names got larger. From the success of magazines in Japan, Nintendo knew that game tips were a valued asset. Players enjoyed the bi-monthly newsletters, crossword puzzles and jokes, but game secrets were most valued. The fan club drew kids in by offering tips for the more complicated games, especially Zelda, with its hidden rooms, secret keys and passageways. The mailing list grew. By early 1988, there were over 1 million Fun Club members, which led then Nintendo of American president Minoru Arakawa to start the Nintendo Power magazine. Since Nintendo did not have many products, it made only a few commercials a year, meaning the quality had to be phenomenal. The budget for a single commercial could reach $5 million, easily 4 or 5 times more than most companies spent. One of the first commercials made under Bill White, Director of Advertising and Public Relations, was the market introduction for The Legend of Zelda, which received a great deal of attention in the ad industry. The Legend of Zelda was a bestseller for Nintendo. It is often featured in lists of games considered the greatest or most influential. A much different sequel for the same system, Zelda 2: The Adventure of Link, was first released in Japan less than a year after its predecessor. Zelda 2 was also very influential to other games like Faxanadu, Moon Crystal, and the Battle of Olympus. Moreover, the Adventure Time, Hey Ice King, Why'd You Steal Our Garbage title, developed by WayForward Technologies, was intended to play like Zelda 2 and pays homage to it. It features very similar gameplay and references to the Zelda series. For the 16-bit era, the Zelda franchise returned to its top-down format to great reception, again becoming a Nintendo classic and selling 4.61 million copies worldwide. Keeping true to the original format, yet developing the game to enhance the player's experience, was the formula that made Nintendo's titles so successful and helped significantly in the early days, creating game franchises and audience anticipation when sequels were being produced, something Sega would take years to get right. The Legend of Zelda sold over 6.5 million copies. It was the first NES title to sell over 1 million. The game placed first in the Players Poll Top 30 in Nintendo Power's first issue, and continued to dominate the list into the early 1990s. The Legend of Zelda was also voted by Nintendo Power readers as the best challenge in the Nintendo Power Awards 1988. The Legend of Zelda is considered a spiritual forerunner of the modern role-playing video game genre, though it is often not considered part of the genre since it lacked key RPG mechanics such as experience points. It had many features in common with RPGs and served as a template for the action role-playing game genre. The game's fantasy setting, musical style, and action-adventure gameplay were adopted by many RPGs. Its commercial success helped lay the groundwork for involved non-linear games in fantasy settings, such as those found in successful RPGs, including Crystalis, Soul Blazer, Square's Seiken Densetsu series, Alundra, and Brave Fencer Musashi. With Nintendo releasing this double barrel of original gaming and securing third-party development exclusivity with producers such as Konami, Capcom and Bandai Namco, they put themselves in a position of complete dominance. Yes, Sega's Master System capabilities were better, but why would the gaming market want a better console they could not play the most desirable games on? The Legend of Zelda and Super Mario Bros. Put Nintendo as the leaders of very two important video game genres, and the opportunity for Sega to become market leaders in any aspect of home video gaming was becoming harder and harder to establish. Sega needed to hang on, no pun intended, throughout 1986 and most of 1987, hoping that their new project, not to be launched until December that year, would be what the Master System needed to turn heads and fight Nintendo.